Greetings. Today, we're exploring a critical topic that's often misunderstood: mental breakdowns. We've all heard the term, but what does it really mean when someone's breaking down? More importantly, how can one recognize the signs in themselves or someone they care about? In this video, we'll explore 7 surprising indicators that mental health might be heading for a crisis. This information could be a game changer for psychological well-being, whether you're here out of curiosity or concern. Let's dive in. Unexpected cognitive fog. Cognitive fog is more than just forgetfulness. It's a complex neurological response to stress that actually changes how the brain processes information. When under extreme stress, the body releases cortisol, which can interfere with the function of neurotransmitters in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thinking and decision-making. A fascinating study at the University of California found that chronic stress actually causes the brain to rewire itself, redirecting its resources from the prefrontal cortex to more primitive brain regions associated with survival. This means that when approaching a breakdown, the brain is literally prioritizing basic functions over higher-level thinking. Constantly losing train of thought, struggling to make simple decisions, or feeling like the mind is wrapped in a thick fog isn't just stress. It could be a sign that the brain is rewiring itself in response to overwhelming pressure. This cognitive disruption can be particularly distressing because it often creates a vicious cycle. The more one struggles to think clearly, the more stressed they become, which in turn exacerbates the cognitive symptoms. Paradoxical sleep patterns. When it comes to mental breakdowns, sleep patterns can become bizarrely contradictory. One might find themselves exhausted all day, dragging through tasks, only to lie awake at night with a racing mind. Or conversely, they might sleep excessively, yet never feel rested. This paradox is a telltale sign that mental state is in turmoil. The science behind this is fascinating. The sleep-wake cycle is regulated by the hypothalamus, which also plays a crucial role in stress response. When approaching a mental breakdown, the chronic activation of the stress response system throws the hypothalamus into disarray. This disrupts the delicate balance of neurotransmitters and hormones that regulate sleep patterns. A groundbreaking study from the Max Planck Institute of Psychiatry found that individuals experiencing severe stress had significantly altered levels of melatonin and cortisol, 2 key hormones involved in sleep regulation. What's more, they discovered that this hormonal imbalance persisted even after the immediate stressor was removed, suggesting that chronic stress can have long-lasting effects on sleep architecture. This disruption isn't just inconvenient, it's a serious threat to mental health. During normal sleep, the brain goes through crucial processes of repair and consolidation. When these processes are interrupted, it can accelerate cognitive decline and emotional instability, creating a dangerous feedback loop that pushes one closer to a full breakdown. Emotional desynchronization. Emotional desynchronization occurs when emotional responses become disconnected from the situations that trigger them. Imagine laughing at sad news, or feeling utterly unmoved by events that would normally bring joy. It's as if emotional reactions are playing from a different script than the one life is following. This desynchronization is more than just mood swings. It's a sign that the brain's emotional processing centers are malfunctioning. The neuroscience behind this is complex, but utterly fascinating. Emotions are typically processed through a network involving the amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex. When approaching a mental breakdown, the communication between these areas becomes disrupted. A groundbreaking study from the University of Michigan used fMRI scans to show that individuals experiencing severe stress had reduced connectivity between these crucial brain regions. This disruption leads to what researchers call emotional blunting, or, in more severe cases, completely inappropriate emotional responses. It's not that one doesn't care about things anymore. It's that the brain's ability to generate appropriate emotional responses has been compromised. What makes this particularly insidious is that it can be hard to recognize in oneself. When on the brink of a mental breakdown, perception of time can become seriously warped in ways that go beyond common experiences. This phenomenon, known as temporal distortion, is a subtle but significant sign that mental state is in trouble. When heading towards a breakdown, one might find themselves losing track of time in dramatic ways. Hours might seem to pass in minutes, or a single afternoon could feel like it's stretching on for days. This isn't just imagination, it's the brain's timekeeping mechanisms going haywire. The science behind this is fascinating. Perception of time is largely governed by a region of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, along with complex networks in the prefrontal and parietal cortices. When under extreme stress, these areas can become dysregulated. A fascinating study from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden found that stress hormones like cortisol can actually alter the firing patterns of neurons in these regions, literally changing how the brain perceives the passage of time. But it goes even deeper than that. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, discovered that chronic stress can actually shrink the prefrontal cortex and enlarge the amygdala, a change that has profound effects on time perception. The prefrontal cortex is crucial for our experience of time, while the amygdala is central to emotional processing. When the balance between these areas is disrupted, it can feel like living in a different temporal reality than everyone else. This temporal distortion can be incredibly disorienting. One might find themselves constantly surprised by what time it is, missing appointments despite their best efforts, or feeling like they're watching their life pass by and fast forward. It's not just absent-mindedness. It's a sign that the brain's fundamental ability to track and process time is being compromised by stress. Somatic symptom amplification is when the brain starts to over-interpret and amplify physical sensations in the body, turning minor discomforts into seemingly major health concerns. When approaching a mental breakdown, the nervous system goes into a state of hyperarousal. This means it becomes overly sensitive to stimuli, including internal bodily sensations. A slight twinge in the stomach might feel like severe pain, or a minor muscle ache could be interpreted as a serious injury. This isn't hypochondria. It's the brain's threat detection systems going into overdrive. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating. Research from the University of Pittsburgh found that chronic stress can lead to changes in the insular and anterior cingulate cortex, brain regions crucial for interpreting bodily sensations. These changes can cause the brain to misinterpret normal bodily signals as signs of danger or illness. This amplification of physical symptoms can create a vicious cycle. The more one focuses on these sensations, the more intense they become, which in turn increases stress and anxiety, pushing one further towards a breakdown. It's a bit like the body's alarm system malfunctioning, blaring at full volume for even the smallest triggers. What makes this particularly challenging is that these physical sensations are very real to the person experiencing them. The pain or discomfort isn't imaginary. The brain is actually processing these sensations as intense and threatening, even if objectively they're minor. Micro-dissociative episodes are brief moments where one feels disconnected from themselves or their surroundings, almost like watching their life through a slightly foggy window. During these episodes, one might feel like they're on autopilot, going through the motions of their day without really being present. Or they might experience a sudden sense of unreality, as if the world around them isn't quite solid. These episodes are usually brief, hence the micro, but they can be incredibly unsettling. The neuroscience behind this phenomenon is fascinating. Dissociation is essentially the brain's way of coping with overwhelming stress or trauma. It's like a circuit breaker that trips when the emotional current gets too high. Research from the University of Cambridge has shown that during dissociative states, there's reduced activity in the brain's salience network, a system that helps us decide what stimuli are important and require our attention. But here's where it gets really interesting. A groundbreaking study published in the American Journal of Psychiatry found that people who experience chronic stress have altered connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and the periaqueductal gray, a region of the brainstem involved in modulating consciousness. This altered connectivity can make one more prone to these micro-dissociative episodes, even in situations that aren't overtly stressful. What makes these episodes particularly significant as a sign of impending breakdown is their increasing frequency. One might start to notice these moments of disconnection happening more often, or in situations where they typically feel grounded and present. It's as if the brain is rehearsing for a more complete shutdown, briefly disconnecting from reality as a way of coping with mounting stress. These episodes can be subtle, and many people might not even realize they're experiencing them. One might find themselves coming to and realizing they've been driving for miles without really being aware of it. Or they might suddenly feel like their own voice sounds strange and far away when they're speaking. Recursive thought patterns aren't just overthinking or worrying. They're a specific type of cognitive loop that can be a major red flag for an impending mental breakdown. Recursive thought patterns are like mental quicksand. One finds themselves stuck on a particular thought or worry, going over it again and again without making progress or finding a resolution. But unlike normal rumination, these thought patterns often become increasingly abstract and disconnected from the original concern. A study published in the journal Nature Neuroscience found that chronic stress can actually change the physical structure of the brain, increasing the density of neurons in the amygdala, the brain's fear center. This structural change can make the brain more prone to getting stuck in these anxious circular thought patterns. What makes these thought patterns particularly insidious is their escalating nature. One might start by worrying about a specific problem, but as the recursive loop continues, thoughts can become increasingly abstract and catastrophic. For example, one might start by worrying about a work deadline, but end up questioning the meaning of existence and their place in the universe. This cognitive recursion isn't just distressing, it's exhausting. It consumes mental energy and makes it difficult to focus on anything else. Many people describe it as feeling like their brain is stuck or glitching, unable to move on to other thoughts or tasks. And there you have it, 7 surprising signs that mental breakdown might be approaching. Remember, experiencing one or even a few of these signs doesn't necessarily mean a crisis is imminent, but they are important signals that mental health needs serious attention. Recognizing these signs early can be the key to preventing a full-blown breakdown. If any of these signs feel familiar, it might be time to reach out for support. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Make sure to ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the signs of mental breakdown. Remember, knowledge is power. Stay curious, stay compassionate, and above all, stay connected to your mental well-being.